Welcome to the Calder Farmstead.
Now the Icehogs back out to center in transition. Carlson with Quenneville 2-on-1. Right when Carlson comes, Quenneville scores!
Here's a chance for Carrick. Fighting scores! Off the face-off! Up in Zeminger. Pulled back to Werenski. Has it. Shoots one. Bounces off a man. 5 seconds left. Werenski. Another jam on the shot. Turning and firing. They go! Scores! They score! Now they catch each other. They both go right over the top. Matching rights to one another. McDermott gets the helmet off of Cassie.
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out right side with Bear. Looks like cutting to the net. Bear will score!
And here are your hosts, Cece and Sean.
Hello and greetings from the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado.
And Truro, Nova Scotia.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to the Calder Farmstead Podcast, episode number 76 for Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. If you're hoping for a podcast featuring discussion topics for conversations with your seed supplier or agronomist, we're not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast. My name is CC Hockley, the AHL editor of Full Press Hockey.
And I'm Sean O'Brien from Stats Track and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy.
And as always, we thank you all for tuning in with us today, tonight, whenever you're consuming this.
And if you're new to hearing CC and I talk about hockey, we're going to recap some of the matchups from this past weekend in the AHL for you. We both watch a lot of games. We're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you may want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're listening to us from, and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone exits, go check that out. So you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes. And let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes reading Britney Spears' letter to Jamie Lynn. You'll never get that time back. So next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey?
It popped up on my Twitter feed, and I've got about 3 minutes into it. And then I was just like, I can't read this. I can't do this. So anyway, first and foremost, let's go over our picks. Let's talk pick'ems from the weekend that was. And as we tend to alternate back and forth, I won the last pick'ems. And of course, Sean, victorious, getting the pick'ems this week. He was at an even 50%, 16 out of 32 correct. I fell a tad short with just 15 of 32 correct. That's 46.9%. for the stats nerds keeping track at home. The model, God, the machines win again, Sean, eked us out. 17 of 32 games predicted correctly, 53.1%. And overall records, Sean and I are tied with a 3-3 picking record against each other. Sean's overall picks for the season, 105 of 207. That's 50.7%. Barely better than mine. I missed a week. Paige filled in for me, so mine is 89 of 176, 50.6%. And I am rounding up in those tenth of a percentages. So
I love, too, that you don't accept Paige's picks as your own. Like, just not having that evil put on you.
Didn't she beat you that week, too?
I genuinely don't remember. That feels like last century at this point.
Time is irrelevant in the age of COVID-19. That is for sure. Well, hey, Sean, let's talk about the first series. And well, I won't spoil anything. Let's just talk about the Providence Bruins. Let's talk about how they did this weekend. And we'll start with a brief games recap. We had a 3-3 for Providence. Friday, 7:05 p.m. versus Hartford. Saturday, 7:05 p.m. at Springfield. And then they went back to Rhode Island, Sunday, 3:05 p.m. versus Bridgeport. And Sean, take it away for that very, very brief games recap.
Friday, Providence beat Hartford on home ice 5-1. Then they traveled to Springfield for Saturday, where they won 5-3, and then came back home Sunday to complete the 3-3 sweep, taking down Bridgeport at home 6-3.
Just like we called it, right? Wrong. No, not at all. Jack Ashawn got called up, so I said that Hartford was going to win on Friday, Providence was going to win on Saturday, and Bridgeport was going to win on Sunday. Essentially, the P Bruins going 1 for 3 on the weekend. Sean, you said Hartford still basically an ECHL team. Springfield has a lot of reinforcements. Bridgeport has been the better team recently, had that big rest advantage. You had Providence over Hartford, but Springfield and Bridgeport over the P Bruins. You also picked the 1 for 3. And yeah, boy, were we proven wrong. And Providence just decided to sweep the weekend. And,
just like the model predicted.
Just like the model predicted. Yes, it did. 55.3% over Hartford, 50.8% over Springfield, and 54.5% over Bridgeport. Again, the Blasted Machines win. Terminator, 7? Rise of the Calder Farmstead
Terminator
AHL
after 3 at best. Let's
we'll move on. Yes, we won't reference that. After 1 and 2, it just kind of went downhill from there. Sean, team level takeaways. We said in the preview that if the P Bruins wanted to be somebody this season, they needed to do better on the back half of back-to-backs and 3-3s. And lo and behold, they did it. They needed to win games like this. They swept the weekend and are now first place in the Atlantic Division. I feel like we blinked our eyes. The weekend happened and boom, Providence is right there at the top of the Atlantic Division standings. How big of a statement was this from the P Bruins?
I mean, kind of like you just said, it seems like this entire season it's been Springfield and Hartford and a little bit of Hershey sprinkled in there for who's been the top of the Atlantic. And then, yeah, we blinked and all of a sudden Providence seemed to come, flying out of nowhere with three wins in 3 days. And now they're the top of the Atlantic. So in terms of how big a statement was this from the Providence, it's a big one. And they dominated stretches in all 3 games. I thought they looked a little bit lethargic at times early on against Hartford, but they were the more talented team. And eventually that managed to shine through. But I feel like at least the first period and a half was a little bit closer than the final score let on. But Saturday and Sunday, they put on a neutral zone clinic against Springfield and Bridgeport, where for long stretches, neither the T-Birds nor the Sound Tigers could move the puck into the Bruins zone. It was basically they were forced to play dump and chase, or they made turnovers in the neutral zone. And that's not really what you see from a lot of forechecks when you think of effective forechecking. You think of that first guy getting pressure on the puck carrier and them getting offensive zone turnovers. But that's not what Providence did by and large. They used a very good neutral zone forecheck to force turnovers or dump-ins or offsides in the neutral zone, and they controlled the flow of play that way. A lot of goals by Springfield and Bridgeport too came in garbage time when the game was, 3-0, 4-1. The game was essentially over, but they, scored a couple of quick ones at the end that really didn't endanger the final in any way, but more just made it look more competitive to people seeing the box score. But I also think a lot of people forgot that Providence has NHL caliber talent and can absolutely win this division. Jack Studnicka, Jesper Frodin, Oscar Steen, who I guess technically still counts as on Providence, even though I don't think he's coming back from Boston anytime soon, which is surprising because we've talked about his inconsistency, but that's a story for another time. Jack Ashan has gotten time with Boston. Aaron Ness, U.S. Olympian Aaron Ness, whose tires we pumped a bunch in the preview. He's, someone who at least has 12 minutes and 50 seconds of recent NHL time. John Moore, who's going to bounce back and forth a lot, has NHL, points on his resume. Not to mention, too, if Jeremy Swayman is going to be spending a lot of time in Providence now that Rask is in Boston, the goaltending depth in Providence is going to be Jeremy Swayman, Troy Grosnick, and Kyle Kaiser-Soze. Good luck, everyone else, because that's probably the best goaltending room in the AHL, bar none. I really can't think of anybody on top of mind. Utica has 2 very good goalies that are probably better than anyone, better than not Jeremy Swayman with the other 2, but they don't have 3. We've seen what Merrick Mittens can do. It's definitely not 3. So the fact that Providence looks to have its goaltending depth, lead pipe, stone cold, locked up, it's looking like this is going to be a team to contend with that I don't feel like came out of nowhere, but definitely was below the radar. And now made a very big statement in the Atlantic with this, not just 3 wins that they squeaked out, but 3 very statement-like wins individually to make one bigger statement.
Yeah, they had a solid team last season, but the fact that they played Hartford and Bridgeport 12 times each, or 13 times or 14 times, I mean, yeah, that kind of diluted the sample, as it were. But when you got Swayman giving victory hugs at the NHL level, him bumping back down once Tuukka Rask comes back. Troy Grosnick, of course, sticks out. Time in Milwaukee before COVID-19 canceled the 1920 season. And of course, Kaiser Soze, just having a good season as well. So when you have that kind of depth in net, yeah, I would tend to agree with you. It's probably one of the best, if not the best goaltending room in all of the AHL, let alone the Atlantic Division, let alone the Eastern Conference. So a lot of players you just named. Oh, go ahead.
I think one thing too that people forget is Providence. Yeah, Providence last year in the Groundhog Day division, they won it, but like in a 3-team division, no matter who the 3 teams are, how impressive is that really? But I think people forget that Providence was really good in 1920 as well. If memory serves me correctly, they won 13 games in a row before the pause. They were on top of that division by it was them and Hershey basically neck and neck. And then when you hear everyone talk about the 1920 season that never finished, it's always Milwaukee and Hershey and like Belleville a little bit. Like it's never Providence, even though Providence finished the season winning like 13 straight games. It seems like Providence is just a team that is good, but nobody talks about. Well, here we are. We're talking about you, Providence. You're good.
Yeah, that's an impressive memory, Sean. 12-game winning streak to end, abruptly end. Canceled and postponed, and then decidedly no more season for 1920. But yeah, very impressive. Providence, yeah, not exactly flying under the radar, but just not anymore. You mentioned a bunch of individual players. Anybody else, and maybe guys that you've already mentioned who stood out to you that you want to dive a little deeper, both good and bad, from Providence, from the P Bruins this season, or this weekend rather, not this season.
Stephen Fogarty really stood out to me. Like I've seen him in bits and pieces over the years, but never really gone too deep a dive on him. More just kind of relying on collective memory of his game in those bits and pieces. And maybe that's a disservice to him because wow, were his puck skills really on display. I mean, repeatedly dangling through guys, creating space, creating offense, really doing a lot. And especially for a guy who has not a complementary skill set, but a supplementary one. He does a lot of the things that a lot of the other players on that team don't do. He's physical, able to play low in corners, battle in front of a team that is much more faster and finessier. I do the English good. But like, it was surprising to see him be able to just have more of the flash that you don't really expect from someone who also grinds down low and plays net front, plays the bumper on the power play. But those were really on display. And he was maybe not undressing guys, but definitely creating space, getting around guys, deked through a couple guys a couple times. It was very impressive from Stephen Fogarty. I also would have bet a significant amount of money that he scored a goal against Hartford, just because, it's the one sure bet you can always make betting on sports is guys who are coming back to a place they spent a long time, that they're going to score in some fashion. They're going to get a point on the board regardless of how. Someone else who stood out, obviously, U.S. Olympian Aaron Ness. That is now his official title, U.S. Olympian Aaron Ness. We talked about him a lot on the preview, pumped his tires up a bit, and the Providence Bruins apparently listened to the show. So thank you, Coach Mooj, for tuning in. We appreciate it because he ran a power play unit the whole weekend. And when Jack Asalin came back into town, they didn't kick him off it so that they could put Brady Lyle and 4 forwards and 1 defenseman. He stuck with it all 3 games. Got a primary assist on the power play against Hartford on a nice pass. Sprung Jacob Lauko for a breakaway that unfortunately Lauko didn't score on. So that one is lost to only the people who watched the game instead of those who just box score preview. But I also want to at least point out, I saw some concerns from his defensive skating that raised some flags for me. He was giving up a lot of space to opposing forwards entering the zone. This is what we typically call gap control for those who are unfamiliar with hockey jargon. Is basically you, as a general rule, you want to be as a defender a stick length away from a forward with the puck, or your forward that's your guy when they are crossing the blue line. And he gave up a lot of space, a lot more than that in those scenarios. And in some cases, those can just be, play was moving fast. I wasn't really suddenly a guy turned and I now am out of gap or whatever. But like a lot of times in very intentional situations, he was giving up 2 or 3 times that gap to forwards coming in. And shockingly, that led to a lot of zone entries against. It led to, possessions against. That's not really good. And that mostly comes from when guys aren't able to basically keep pace and pivot and turn forward, and they have to give up extra space because their skating can't compensate. And this happens at the NHL level of guys when they don't have good defensive skating anymore, have to give up more space. Seth Jones is notorious for this. Duncan Keith too, now as he's approaching, his senior citizen years in the NHL. He is in senior citizen years, but like that's what happens when kind of players start to become too fast for your ability to keep up with them defensively in terms of skating. And that was a concern that I saw from him pretty repeatedly over the weekend. Now, maybe this is just small sample viewing and I'm putting too much weight on a couple of instances of it, but at least a pause for concern. Somebody else who stood out to me for Providence is Samuel Asalin. The ass man himself, just on fire the whole weekend. Drove offense, played well in all 3 zones. There's really nothing but good things I can say about his play this weekend, other than we will be talking about him later in the show. Hey. I also didn't mind Nick Wolfe this weekend, who's not a player I would normally take this space to highlight, but I think of Nick Wolfe it generally is more of a blunt instrument on defense and not really providing too much other than that outside of like accidental secondary assists. But a lot more impressive moments from him in this weekend, stepping up to make good plays at the blue line, having tight gaps, making good reads in the offensive zone. Pleasant surprise from Nick Wolfe, seeing a lot of small but useful moments that probably don't go that highly noticed, but are still important pieces for them to have.
All righty. So looking forward, we asked the
Sorry,
question.
This is supposed to be where I set you up there. My bad. This is a little bit of a switch for us. So given all of that analysis, let's look forward here. Where does Providence go from here after this 3-3 CC?
Well, again, they swept the weekend, kind of a surprise, but the P Bruins will face off against Bridgeport 2 more times this coming weekend in a home and home. And Providence will be having kind of groundhog division flashbacks from last season. It'll be the 2nd and 3rd game in a row against the Sound Tigers, as Sean likes to say. But yeah, like we mentioned earlier, the Bruins now sit atop the Atlantic Division, but those top 4 teams are very close together. You have Providence, 0.621 points percentage. Second place, Springfield, 0.606. Hershey, 0.603. And Hartford, 0.597. So it's not like Providence surged ahead and everybody else fell down the standings. No, it's still very much anybody's division as we head on into the second half of the season.
Second half-ish.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break here, and after the break, we will get to Rochester and Belleville. If you're just here for the Providence Bruins, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, check us out on social media where we do the memes. Links to our social media, as well as our popular podcast hosts and our YouTube channel, can be found at our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. We're going to pay some bills, run some ads. Click on them, listen to them if you like. We'd appreciate it. But no matter what you do, stay tuned.
All right, we've come back from the other side of the Atlantic Division weekend recap, and the Providence Bruins sweeping the 3-3 that they had this weekend. North Division, Rochester versus Belleville weekend series. Friday, 7:05, Saturday, 5:05 at Rochester in New York there. Sean, talk about the games recap real quick. How did the Amherks fare against the B-Sens?
Friday, Belleville hangs on and wins a 4-round shootout, 4-3 in a pretty interesting game. Saturday, Michael Marsh scores the game-tying goal as he got hit in the chest with a Jack Quinn, I'm going to say pass, but right off his chest, right into the net for the game-tying goal with 4 seconds left in regulation, forcing the game to OT. Igor T10 Sokolov saves the day for the B-Sens, though, 34 seconds, winning 6-5 in an overtime that I'm sure every coach in their, in hockey watched and just screamed in agony as it was back and forth, up and down Wild West for all 34 glorious seconds of it.
Overtime hockey at its finest. You got to love it. All right, let's talk picks. Buffalo having a hell of a time keeping that goaltending tree standing tall. I picked a Belleville sweep. Sean felt a split, though. Didn't believe Rockford had enough goaltending to get it through 2 games without failure. He picked Belleville Friday, Rochester on Saturday. The model also had Belleville in a sweep, 51.9% favorite in both games. And like Sean mentioned in the games recap, Belleville, even though it took some extra time in both games, Belleville ended up taking both of them. So B-Sens getting the sweep, unexpected, North Division, bottom dwellers against the mighty Rochester Amherks. But again, missing players, call-ups, things like that, that's all going to factor into it. So Belleville gets the sweep. Let's talk big team level takeaways here. Sean, I think the big story here for Rochester is Jack Quinn, to kind of go a little granular in the team level takeaways here. But by all accounts, he didn't play a good game on Friday, then stormed back and potted a hat trick on Saturday. Would you say that's a fair assessment of Quinn's weekend?
Somewhat. He definitely didn't play well Friday. That part I think we can all agree on, that he was not at his best on Friday. I thought he looked unsettled and desperate. He looked like someone who was trying to force play instead of being patient and precise. And I understand when you're down and you're behind, you're trying to storm back. Patience isn't exactly the virtue you think of when you come to mind. But it was a lot of him, what felt like throwing pucks from anywhere he could, making passes into traffic and just trying to Hail Mary it at most costs. Like, he looked frustrated, a little off his game, and just not trying to play too much in the moment instead of sitting back, relaxing, taking a deep breath, having a Zen moment or two in the locker room and calmly going about his business like a pro. And that's, he's still young. There will be days like that happen. But it was very uncharacteristic for him. Also, very big unplugged controller moment from him that led to a Belleville shorthanded goal where he was just slow to react to do anything at 2 different points in the same kind of sequence. One where he, like, as soon as I saw him kind of staring down the play at his own blue line, at the offensive blue line, as he was back there as part of the power play, and kind of like not realizing, oh, this might go badly the other way. I should probably get into the neutral zone to prepare to play defense. And he's still kind of just like, oh, right, this is defense time now. And then he straight just let the Belleville player go right past him, who tipped it in on the somewhat 2-on-0, 2-on-1, that he just stopped skating, unplugged controller. Saturday, though, he had another one of those unplugged controller moments at the end of the second period as Cole Reinhardt stripped him from the puck in the offensive zone. And Quinn just kind of watched him skate down and score with zero effort back checking. Like, yes, there were other defensemen back, but they weren't exactly in great position as Reinhardt basically just skated right through the 2 of them in for a somewhat breakaway. And Quinn, again, just unplugged controller, coasted. Like, we've talked about how star offensive producers don't need to be defensive heroes and stuff like that, because a lot of times playing that kind of in that defensive structure and giving more defensive effort takes away from your ability to do what you do best, which is create offense. And that is true, but these were not those moments. These were both 2 moments where, like, by defensive effort, I mean, you had 5 feet that you needed to skate harder for. 5 whole ass feet, and you didn't do it. Like, there are some moments in which I understand cheating out of the zone early, or, maybe not throwing your body around with reckless abandon low in the zone or something like that. Like, if you're a star forward, you can not do those, and I'm okay with that because that allows you to produce offense. But just going unplugged controller and watching the guy who scores the goal go right past you, you can't do that. You absolutely can't do that. And Jack Quinn did it twice Belleville scored both times and won by 1 in both games. So those seem like kind of important moments for you to have maybe faked like you cared. And he didn't do it. Now, granted, yes, he did score a hat trick on Saturday and put in an assist on the game-tying goal with 4 seconds left. I think there's at least some situation that, but he did play offensively more precise, more controlled, better. But it's really hard to overlook those 2 big defensive, just lackadaisical and lazy efforts that led directly to goals in games you lost by 1. Like, Rochester could have walked away with 4 points if maybe in those very, small instances, Jack Quinn played defense.
They kept it close and walked away with 2, but yeah, I mean, he could have walked away with 4.
They almost walked away with none.
Yeah, very true. Very true. They were cutting it rather close by the skin of their teeth there, especially on that. What was that? It was the Michael Mersch goal that hit him in the chest.
Oh,
right?
No, they should have. They almost didn't get to overtime on Friday's game. Or sorry, no. I'm thinking of the wrong game. Sorry, so many games they blend together. Saturday's game, they almost didn't make it to overtime because the ref blew the whistle early on a puck that Belleville was literally in the process of shooting down into the empty net as the whistle blew it dead because the ref lost sight of the puck that was loose in the crease. Belleville recovered, shot it right down into the empty net. That would have been the game. And then Michael Mersch scored off of his, Jack Quinn basically shot it at Michael Mersch's chest and it went in.
Oh,
but yeah, so Belleville got lucky to get that extra point there on Saturday. Because if I'm Troy Mann, I'm pretty furious about that. But that's officiating this weekend across the AHL games that we covered was not great, but that's a story for another time.
Let's talk about the B-Sens a little bit. We had one of the keys for the weekend. They were not supposed to take any penalties. This Amherst power play leads the league. Very dangerous. Did Belleville listen?
That would be a hard no. They took 2 penalties in the opening 5 minutes of Friday's game and 9 overall on the weekend. They managed to survive Friday, but gave up 2 power play goals on Saturday on 3 opportunities. And they got kind of fortunate, I thought, as the Amherst power play was out of sorts on Friday. A lot of just guys not looking like they were on the same page. Not a lot of Michael Mersch time on Friday, surprisingly. Definitely some moments, but not a lot of utilizing him in the way that we kind of talked about earlier. Jack Quinn, like we said, big part of the power play, looked scrambled, like he was, trying to force stuff. Their power play just wasn't clicking on Friday. Saturday, it was, though. But also they had the benefit of Saturday of being able to just kind of play by prison rules for a good half of the game. There were a lot of penalties that were just not called in Saturday's game for reasons that I can only say, who knows? And that was not unusual. This was a weekend of more or less prison rules for some of these games that is a theme that will be coming back up. I think Providence was the only weekend series that we covered that felt like we got decent officiating the entire way through. But yeah, there were a lot of penalties that Belleville definitely did that didn't get called on Saturday. So it's not like they weren't trying out there to take penalties. They just didn't always get caught somehow.
Okay.
And it bit them. It absolutely did. This should have been and I think there was a piece by Troy Mann before Saturday's game where he's like, yeah, we need to take fewer penalties. I'm hoping for less than 3.
Per game or for the whole weekend?
For just Saturday's game.
Oh, gotcha. All right. Well, yeah. Moving on. Let's talk about the other key to the weekend that we had. Uncommon one. The both of us, we favor quality over quantity in terms of shot attempts and, how to set up an offense and everything. However, we did recommend that, with the goaltending issues that were happening, obviously, like I said in my pick, the Buffalo Sabres goaltending tree is withered very poorly. We recommend B-Sens shoot from wherever you want, shoot from anywhere. And did they do that, Shawnee?
Oh, they brought that Han Solo mentality. Shoot first, shoot often. Very much, yes. That was the, apparently Troy Mann only tuned in for that part of the show and then just cut out before we said don't take penalties. But yeah, very much, yes. They played 2 ECHL caliber goalies and they just let rubber fly from anywhere. And to their credit, it worked kind of like we said it might. They scored 10 goals on the weekend and quite a few of them were Wild West snipes from distance, the old Wild West shootout where you stare them down eye to eye and just shoot past them. That's not how goals are supposed to be scored at the AHL and definitely not at the NHL level. But when you have ECHL goalies and AHL level shooters, you can get away with some of that. And that's what a lot of it was. A lot of goals scored by the B-Sens from distance that just overpowered goaltenders, whether it was they didn't make the initial save. And there were some that had some traffic in front, but nothing where it was the goalie didn't see it. Like they had obstacles in front, but nothing that completely blinded them. And there were a couple where the shot, they made the initial save, but they weren't able to control the rebound. They kicked the rebound to a terrible place and it goes in. Belleville puts it in like that. So there was a lot of just, yep, that's an ECHL goaltender. More so Charles Williams than Matt Robson Friday compared to Saturday. Williams was in Saturday, Robson Friday, but Charles Williams got beat a couple times cleanly from distance. And that wasn't terribly surprising seeing his ECHL record to date. And Matt Robson seeing what he's done so far, that was not a terrible surprise. So yeah, good for the B-Sens to take advantage of that. They also, I wouldn't say that that's all that they did on the weekend to achieve these victories, because that's not true. The Belleville also did a very good job of turning the neutral zone into sludge. Especially on Saturday, they ran a textbook on how to keep the Amerks from running their usual counterattack run and gun style where they're happy to trade chances because they feel like they have the talent, and they've been doing it on teams all season. And Belleville really put out the playbook of how to kind of slow them down in the neutral zone. And they didn't use that first forechecking pressure, that heavy forechecking pressure that we're used to seeing from teams when we think of successful forechecks. Kind of like Providence with what they did. Most of their effectiveness was in that second and third line of defense in the neutral zone, where they had F2 and F3. They're usually wingers as forwards, basically in passing lanes, breaking up plays as they were coming into the neutral zone and forcing it back into the Amerks territory. Belleville really controlled the flow of play through a lot of Saturday doing that. And it was impressive and something I think other teams are probably going to, if they're diligent enough, watch and copy.
Moving from a team to an individual perspective, Sean, did anyone in particular stand out to you from this weekend series?
Well, besides Jack Quinn, who we definitely talked about already, Brandon Biro, a lot of very small but very noticeable plays, at least from my eye. And I don't just pick him out because he's a Penn State alum, although I am contractually obliged to point out that he's a Penn State alum and therefore great. But a lot of small plays from Brandon Biro. Read the penalty kill well, hit Ethan Pro up top where Pro had a wide open shooting lane and could walk into the one-timer. Very good play by Biro, but a very small, kind of nuanced play to see the penalty kill was collapsed and make that read. He had a Datsuk-like steal on Friday too, which is not you don't get to make Datsuk-like steals unless you make a capital D Datsuk-like steal. And he absolutely did one. Overall, I thought he was very impressive in the role that he kind of plays on that team. More of a middle six to bottom six energy line grinder who can provide some offensive upside. I thought he did very well in that role for the Amerks this weekend, and is someone who I always look forward to watching because he is a Penn State alum and we are. The other player who really stood out for me in both good and bad ways for Belleville was Lassie Thompson. We talked about in the preseason preview that Lassie Thompson was a risk taker in transition, but in the offensive zone never seemed to really develop the ability to make use of the same kind of reads that he did through transition, where he wouldn't manipulate defenders, didn't really have the playmaking vision or hockey IQ that we would see from someone who could do some of the other things that he did. It didn't really mesh with his skill set, and that was an area of him to focus on throughout the season and develop. And this weekend, I felt like he stood out in that aspect in the offensive zone, made some really good strides in playmaking in the offensive zone. Yeah, he had the nice goal on the wrist shot, but I saw more of him moving the puck well, creating space in the offensive zone, making very heady plays. That's not something we saw from him last season or in juniors or even earlier in this season. And that's a good sign of development. On the other end, however, you definitely saw some very questionable defensive zone play, including one where he left Jack Quinn wide ass open on that tap-in goal on Saturday. And that is a cardinal sin that will get you stapled to the bench. Like, he straight up had Jack Quinn, like, was on his man at the low post. The puck kind of cycled away from him, and he just let Jack Quinn get behind him, never looked back, never thought, oh, hey, wait a minute. Where's the best skater on the ice? Oh, he's standing at the far post, just wide. Oh, that is one that Troy Mann is going to see when he reviews the film and just face palm like he's Captain Picard. Like, that was a very, very noticeably like bad moment from Lassie Thompson. And for the most part, I thought he was good in the defensive zone. Like, nothing quite, outstanding, but nothing quite that egregious. But that's one of those where when you make a cardinal sin like that, you don't just get to say one Hail Mary and be okay.
Yeah. I mean, Jack Quinn, they say that good players are visible on the ice. Whenever a player of talent touches the puck, or even when they don't touch the puck and you can just see them make those smart, heady moves, and you leave a guy like that wide open, it's not going to bode well for you.
No, shockingly, leaving one of the premier goal scorers in the AHL wide open at the back door is not going to go well for you very often.
Huh. Imagine that.
Yeah. So that about concludes our recap here. Cece, let's look forward. Where do both of these teams go now that this weekend is history?
Well, Amherst still boasting that number 1 overall power play in the AHL. They look to regroup after earning, like I mentioned earlier, 2 of those 4 points on the weekend. Second place in the North, currently behind a lofty Utica Comets. It's Utica and everybody else still. They will host the Syracuse Crunch, Rochester will, on Wednesday, January 19th, before heading to Cleveland for a two-game set this weekend. Belleville, to follow up their shootout and overtime wins that we covered very thoroughly. The B-Sens, before we recorded this matchup, they actually lost on Monday night against the Syracuse Crunch by a score of 2-1 and remain the bottom dwellers in the North Division. Belleville, they're going to head into a home-and-home up in Canada against Laval this coming weekend. The B-Sens are 4-2-0 against the Rocket this season thus far. So not too shabby when you're winning 2/3 of your games against a Canadian foe, or at least I guess you could call it a rivalry game in the North Division there.
Yeah, a French-Canadian team against a kind of French team. It's three-quarter French game.
Three-quarter French game. Yes, the good old 75% Quebecois, I guess.
It is funny too, because like, do you remember that time like 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago when we're like, Belleville might win this, is like a contender to finish in like 3rd place in this division, and then now all of a sudden it was like, man, that seems like so long ago. That was such a different team. Pontus Abe was on that team.
Yeah. I mean, the way that Canada is handling the pandemic, I mean, that might play a part in it, and just guys going down, and I'm having a moment here. Ottawa and Belleville's ECHL affiliate is Atlanta this year, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, because I can't think of the name. The Beast. Brampton. Yep.
No longer. No more. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I saw Spiros and Ostis the other day too.
Yeah?
I don't remember where though.
In person?
No, not in person.
Oh, okay.
No, he was on a broadcast he was in Grand Rapids. I think he's a professional development coach for Manitoba.
Yes, that's correct. He is working with Manitoba now.
Okay.
Former Brampton Beast coach for our listeners at home. Yes.
But yeah, So yeah, I think Belleville choosing Atlanta because I mean, even though ECHL affiliations are basically made up, I mean, it's because I think as we're going to talk about, Manitoba had some Toledo guys who is supposed to be Grand Rapids affiliate play against.
Yeah. That's
ECHL affiliates are basically made up. But I'm wondering if they were thinking, if they're rethinking that Atlanta one now that COVID is once again being a humongous pain in the ass. But I also think too, it's like that Belleville roster felt different than it does now. Like Cole Sherwood was on it, was a shiny object.
That's true.
Pontus Abe was on it and was, we're feeling good about him. Matt Murray looked like he was getting sent down, and then the rest of the division looked like it was kind of falling apart. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, but what if no?
Yeah. Much more bullish a few weeks ago than definitely now. Even with the victories this weekend, it still feels like very kind of like.
I still think they get out of the basement, but like, I think they are going to be a team that is within 2 points of not making the playoffs or making the playoffs. Like they're going to be a team that sneaks in or sneaks out of the playoffs. Like they're going to be right on that cut, I think, at the end of the season. All right,
I think that's fair assessment.
Yeah, I think that's enough about that. We're going to take a break here. After the break, we will get to Grand Rapids and Manitoba. If you're just here for Rochester and Belleville, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. It's no use checking out our weekend previews on Monday morning or our weekend recaps as the next weekend's about to start. Doesn't really do you a lot of good. Check us out on social media too, where we do the memes. Links to all of that can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. We're going to pay some bills. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Okay, we've covered the 2 weekend series that were in the Eastern Conference. Let's head on over to the Western Conference. Grand Rapids, Manitoba, weekend series Friday, Saturday, 7 p.m. in Grand Rapids at the Van Ansel Arena there in Michigan. Sean, let's talk games recaps real quick. Friday and Saturday night. Take it away.
So Friday, drawn out back and forth affair over all 3 periods. Jonathan Begrion gets the Griffins a dub with less than a minute to go in overtime. 3-2 victory for Grand Rapids. Saturday, only 2 whole goals scored in regulation. And that was one aside in the third period. OT and shootout. Todd Burgess, Luke Johnson put pucks by Cal Pickard to give the Moose a 2-1 shootout victory over the Griffins. Both games, rather ugly affairs, but we will get to that in a second.
Yes, we will. Picks, Grand Rapids on Friday, Manitoba on Saturday for me. Cha-ching. Sean, you said I can't count on the Jets sending guys down. You were going to take the Griffins in the sweep. And actually, I was wrong. Yeah, Griffins did sweep, didn't they? Or no. Moose won the second one. Boy,
you got it right. I mean, if you don't want to count yourself as getting it right, I'll take those free points. But like,
no, I did, and even with that, I still couldn't eke out a pick'ems victory against you. But the model picked Grand Rapids 54.4% favorite in both games. Again, Grand Rapids on Friday, Manitoba on Saturday. Keep it straight, CC. There we go. Okay. Let's talk the 21, 22, 23 players on the roster. We're going to do a team level takeaway right now. Grand Rapids and Manitoba battle to a weekend split here. Yes, let's keep it straight. Manitoba didn't get any reinforcements from the Jets like we theorized about, but they still managed to pull out a loser point and a dub. How do both sides view this weekend, Mr. O'Brien?
Well, if you're Grand Rapids, I don't know how to view this anyway, but very frustrating. I don't know how Ben Simon deals with this weekend. It took a dead angle goal by the Griffins to get to OT. That's it's not a good look, especially when you are clearly the most talented team on the ice. They felt like the Griffins just failed to generate quality scoring chances against a largely ECHL roster and bottom 6 AHL players. Like, don't get me wrong, I like me some Mikey Isomont. He's a good AHL player. A couple other guys on Grand Rapids were, on Manitoba are, good AHL players, but this was by and large a skeleton crew for Manitoba that got no reinforcements, played a goaltender I had to Google. Like these were games you should have been able to secure 4 full points on. And the fact that you only got 2 and needed, a dead angle goal to get to OT in one of them, that's not a good look for you. For the life of them too, they could not find open shooting lanes. The Moose must have 50 block shots on this weekend. There's just ice bags being passed around galore. And like, they weren't the block shots where like you shot at the sea of humanity in front, it just happened to hit one of them. They were like, I tried to put this puck past you, that you being in my shooting lane, 5 feet away, and I didn't even come close. I put it dead square into your shins. Those are mistakes that you just can't, and they continue to make them. The Grand Rapids power play looked unbelievably ineffective, going 2 for 12 on the weekend and repeatedly just not even being able to enter the zone. And yes, the Moose have a highly rated penalty kill, but that's with all of their decor and a full roster in town. This is not that team you played. That penalty kill rating by the Moose does not apply, and yet somehow still applied as they went 10 for 12 on the weekend. Like I'd call that unacceptable, but it happened. You have to accept it. It is now a fact. A lot of Grand Rapids too, just trying to make perfect plays for SportsCenter top 10 instead of shooting the puck when they had shooting lanes inside a home plate. A lot of extra passes that got broken up repeatedly. This is a frustrating weekend series to play in, even though, they still managed to get, I said 2 points earlier. They got 3. They won one game and then went to the overtime in the other. But like, you were very close to disaster in these games. And that's not something that should have ever even been in the negotiation for. And yet has been Grand Rapids' story for a lot of the season, where they just keep playing down to competition and not really playing to the level that they're capable of, that the roster that they have on paper suggests that they are. And here we are again, trying to figure out, how does Grand Rapids, who has a good team, play like Grand Rapids has a good team? If you're Manitoba, though, this is a confidence building win for your bottom 6, or in this case, your top 6, because they were the same thing this weekend. They had very solid stretches where they shut Grand Rapids down. They skated hard. They worked hard this weekend. It wasn't efficient. It wasn't pretty. But if you can pull out wins like this, that's a big boost for your team, a big boost for your confidence, because, getting your skill guys, your Cole Perfettis, should he ever return, or a lot of their big 4 defensemen, Jonathan Kovacevic, Ville Hinola, like getting those guys up and going and ready to play. That's not a challenge. It's a lot of times getting your bottom 6 guys to feel that swag. This is a swagger building win for them, as they were able to, take down still, I believe, the 3rd place team in that division. CC, fact check me on that real quick while I finish up here. But if you could get your bottom 6 guys to feel like that they are, just as capable of grinding out wins as anyone else on the roster, that's a big boost for morale in your locker room and a big boost for the way your team kind of comes together and functions as a whole.
The fact that, our full press hockey writer, Jacob Stoller, has been extolling the depth that the Moose have had on their and so the fact that, you have a weekend like this where your depth steps up. And like you said, it's a swagger win. It's a swagger weekend for these guys. It's saying something that Manitoba, and you said it last episode as well, but they could very well be a dark horse to come out of the Central Division. If they, by some crazy set of circumstances, upset the Chicago Wolves, or maybe the Chicago Wolves get upset in the first round, which I highly doubt. But, if a series goes 7 games, I think Manitoba can push Chicago to the limit. And I think that'd be some exciting hockey.
Oh, I think it would be a very interesting series. Exciting maybe not be the word I would put in, because Manitoba is not a sexy team in that aspect where Chicago is. But I think it would be good hockey. It would be well worth the analysis of breaking down. And I mean, I give credit to Jacob Stoller too. He's correct that they have a very deep team, but I don't even think he thought like this wasn't your depth winning games. This was a skeleton crew pulling it together. I mean, Pagansky, Isomont, Luke Johnson, Jeff Malott was there, Todd Burgess, and Leon Gawanka was in, Evan Polai, but like those are your third and fourth line guys or some healthy scratches occasionally for the Moose when they're at full strength. Like they had guys in there that I'm like, I don't even know who. I've been watching minor league hockey for years now, and I've never heard of, I don't know, Thomas Caron, Matt Alfaro. I mean, I suppose I've probably heard of Dean Stewart just because his name is Dean Stewart, and there are probably 50 of them. But like, I had to look up a lot of these guys in Elite Process to be like, these are whom?
Yeah. Let's talk guys we do know and guys that stood out from Manitoba at the player level. So guys that were on the ice, guys that weren't on the ice. I mean, yeah, let's talk about who stood out to you, Sean.
I mean, for one, Declan Chisholm, Jonathan Kovacevic, and Ville Heinola stood out for me. And none of them played, and that was hugely noticeable. The amount of glass and out or simple plays made by the skeleton crew the Moose employed on their defensive core really made the advantage that the Moose have when they're on the ice even clearer. I mean, there was a lot of instances too in transition. Even though I felt like the Moose did a very good job of kind of containing Grand Rapids in transition, there were a lot of moments in which I was watching the Moose defense play, and it was like, that would have been a play that Jonathan Kovacevic stepped up and killed at the red line. That would have been a stretch pass that Ville Heinola completed. That would have been a charge led by Declan Chisholm. Like those were moments that were absolutely missing from how the Moose, create offense off the back end. And yeah, this Moose team was going to look different than all of the, previous iterations of it this season, just because of, again, skeleton crew. But to see how differently it had to function because that talent was missing really speaks to how much those players stand out when they're in Manitoba. The other one too, I thought was Mikey Isomont. He played okay, but this was definitely a sobering kind of moment for him. Early on in the season, he felt like he might be a breakout guy this year in the AHL. He was off to a really hot start and he looked good doing it. It looked like it could have been a sustainable pace for him, that he had found a good, team that he had chemistry with, a system that utilized him well, all of these things to pump up his tires. And while he's, certainly slowed down over the past couple weeks, this was a moment in which he could have stepped up and shined. The team needed you to step up and carry the load on offense and be the guy, a thing that you have not been pretty much your entire career or asked to be. And here was the moment. Like, if you were going to step up and be the guy, this was a damn good weekend to do it. And don't get me wrong, he played pretty well, I thought. He was contributing, made some good plays in the offensive zone, but he did not carry this offense to glory by a pretty wide margin. And when you're ready for prime time, those are the things that you need to be able to do. And as much as I like Mikey Isomont, and I think he's still a very good player at this level, he's not ready for prime time yet. And this was an example of that. On the Grand Rapids side, Jared Mcizake stood out for me, and I was harsh on them the last time we covered him, and I thought he looked much improved this weekend. I still wouldn't call it good, but he looked more like the guy I remember seeing from what feels like, a lifetime ago before 9 injuries happened to him. His skating looked a lot smoother. He defended a lot better. He looked more involved in the play. He looked physical. He made heads up plays with the puck in the offensive zone and in transition. I remember last time he looked like he was, missing one leg and half drunk on the ice. And that was not the case this weekend. He looked a lot better, a lot smoother, a lot faster. Like the game was not moving too fast for him. He looked a lot improved. And I thought that was another big step. Jonathan Begrion also, I thought, was probably the best play driver for Grand Rapids. It seemed like every time he was on the ice, I noticed him. And the play-by-play guys noticed him too, and how short his stick is, which is not a euphemism. Apparently his stick is like half of what you would normally do. I didn't take particular notice to that, but whatever. Noticeably absent from this series, even though they definitely played in it. Taro Hirose, again, milk carton, was not a factor in either game. And that's another just things that can't happen. Ryan Murphy, definitely stood out for Grand Rapids in a positive way. If there was someone who put a team on his shoulders and tried to drive as much offense as he could from the blue line, Ryan Murphy was that guy. He was down deep in the offensive zone several times, and I don't think he got caught doing it a single time, which is impressive because usually you put your hand in the cookie jar that many times, there's only it's only a matter of time. But he managed to balance that really well, created a good amount of offense, scored a goal, and in a weekend in which only 6 goals are scored, any goal you score is a big one. So, but Ryan Murphy also really looked like he found more of the offense and the play driving that we saw in Henderson last year that was reborn from seasons of frustrating, play by him. For him to kind of at least capture that for a little bit this weekend was good to see. But I think that will do it unless you had some additional thoughts, CC.
Just echoing a sentiment I've said on the program a number of times this season is that, Hirose, when he's going and the Griffins feed off of him. I mean, that's what you want from a captain. And I've said that before, on the ice, off the ice, when you have somebody that's clicking on all cylinders, that is leading the way like Taro Hirose is supposed to be doing, then, it's just, the energy is contagious. It just, you go forth and you put forward your best effort. And it's what all of the best athletes do in any given team sport. That a true leader will inspire others to do better. And when Hirose is when he's not up to snuff, I don't think the Griffins are up to snuff as a team, period.
One more guy that did stand out for me I wanted to mention here very, very quickly was Dominic Shine. In both positive and negative ways. I thought he did a really good job of being noticeable in the offensive zone, creating offense and leading rush attempts. He was one of the few people I think that consistently made controlled zone entries for Grand Rapids against Manitoba in like actual controlled zone entry situations where there was actually a defender like prepared to stop him and he got by him. Also took an incredibly stupid penalty after a legal check. That was a clean hit and decided that he had to go do some hood rat stuff about it. And I don't understand that. But especially too, taking a 2-minute instigator, giving Manitoba a power play in a tie game in the second, just a dumb move by Dom Shine, but otherwise a noticeably good weekend for him outside of that very stupid moment. Anyway, I think that wraps it up for our analysis here. CC, this weekend is now history. Tell us about what we can look forward to from both of these teams.
Well, let's talk about Grand Rapids first. Moving on from Manitoba for the rest of the regular season. The Griffins washing their hands of the Moose in the 21-22 regular season. We may see them in the postseason. We'll see. But they will head to Cleveland on Tuesday. Then they host Milwaukee on Saturday and Toronto on Monday, bumping out a little further past that weekend. But Grand Rapids currently 3rd in the Central Division. You were correct on that earlier, Sean. 0.548 points percentage behind Manitoba. Bit of a step up at 0.672. And Chicago, of course, one of the best teams in the AHL, 0.773 points percentage currently. So Grand Rapids, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, bit more separation in steps between those 3 teams. Manitoba, like I mentioned, the Moose they're on a 7-game point streak to start 2022. They have not played a game where they haven't at least scored 1 point. They have gone 5-0-2 in those matchups. They'll finish off their 6-game road trip at Iowa on Wednesday, January 19th, before heading back home to host the division and conference leading Chicago Wolves on Saturday and Sunday. That will be an interesting 1-2 matchup there in the Central Division.
I think we might have to pivot and cover that series just because of what it means.
Yes.
Although I guess we should kind of wait and hold out on that because if Manitoba still has a skeleton crew, that's really not going to be the series we hoped.
No.
Also, fun fact, Grand Rapids goes back to Canada to play Toronto, but they don't play Manitoba again. That's weird.
Yeah.
Works.
And also, I believe Grand Rapids plays Ontario this season as well. Or at least they're hosting Ontario. The Reign are going to Grand Rapids, Michigan. Ain't that fun? The look on your face.
They really do.
Told you.
Friday, February 4th set. Who scheduled these? I mean, I wish that more of these things happened, but like,
Sure.
that really feels random. But okay, whatever. That'll be a fun one. Two teams that probably have never played each other.
I don't believe they have. I don't believe so.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. After that, we will get to Ontario's division, but not Ontario, in San Diego and Abbotsford. If you're just here for Grand Rapids and or Manitoba, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. It's not very useful if you hear this episode next week. So please check us out and subscribe. Also check us out on social media where we do the memes. Links to all of that and more can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. We're going to run some ads, pay some bills. Stay tuned.
Last series from the weekend that was to recap here on the Calder Farmstead. San Diego versus Abbotsford, Friday and Saturday, 7 p.m. at the Pechanga Arena there in San Diego, California. Sean, give us some games recap. Tell us what happened very briefly on Friday and Saturday.
Friday, Abby smacks the goals 5-1 on the back of 23 saves on 24 shots faced by the Abby Nucks netminder Michael DiPietro. Easy night for Mikey. Lucas Elvenes, the only San Diego goal scorer, potted his first goal in a Gulls uniform and the throwback retro Gulls uniforms too. I really wish that they would do the goal, that those colors, like that exact uniform with just their regular crest on it. That should be their primary jersey. I'm not taking questions at this time. Saturday, the goals go up 4-1 in the third, but a couple of late goals isn't enough for Abby to try and run it back. They scored the third one with literally 1 second left on the clock to take a 4-3 victory at the Pechanga Arena in California.
And we're going to talk about the picks. I said San Diego would stir up that home cooking. These teams are not lighting it up in the Pacific Division, kind of more towards the bottom there. But I picked a goal sweep. Sean, you said both teams have looked pretty bad recently, but Abbotsford definitely been the worst of the two. You also picked a goal sweep. Model also picked San Diego, 53.8% favored in both games.
So we got sandbagged here. Hold on. I'm going to interrupt you because I at least want to make this point. We absolutely got sandbagged here by Abbotsford roster moves. As a bunch of guys came back to the roster, came out of COVID protocol. I feel bamboozled by this. I absolutely would have made different picks if I got to see the roster, the game day roster when we recorded.
Didn't Phil DiGiuseppe come back for that second game?
Came back. Hold on, I have the list here because we're going to talk about it later.
We had a weird goaltending thing too, where Artur Silovs was the starting goaltender, but then their backup goaltender was weird. Their backup goaltender, it's a guy that it wasn't DiPietro, that's for sure, but it was some random e-bug guy, from San Diego State or something like that. It was just really.
Hold on, pulling up now because I don't remember that.
Okay,
because I didn't look at the backup goalie was in that game.
Of course,
yeah. Matt Zenzola.
Yeah. It was kind of a head scratcher as to what happened to DiPietro. I think it might have been an injury. I don't think it was COVID-19 related, but
I mean, he looked good. So, but yeah, Patan and Rathbone came back from injury. Dries, Lockwood, Brubaker, and Wu came back from COVID protocol. DiGiuseppe came back from Vancouver and COVID protocol. So yeah, that's a big switcheroo there. I feel bamboozled by it, but we'll get to that later. I wanted to point out, if I knew that, I would have picked Abbotsford to at least split the weekend with them.
Well, and I mean, Sean, it's been a while since we've seen the San Diego Gulls in action. So the last time you said they struggled to execute and looked sloppy, but that would improve with time. How did they look this weekend? Is it improving with time?
Well, they struggled to execute and they looked sloppy.
There you go.
Some of that was the roster. I literally had to Google some of the bottom of their lineup, which was not an uncommon occurrence this weekend, as quite a few teams had some skeleton crew issues, which we just talked about. Some of it is just their defense continuously fumbling pucks, not making clean zone exits. Abbotsford won Friday's game decisively because they flat out executed better than the goals. That was the story of Friday's game. One team had crisper passes, skaters where we're supposed to be by and large, followed the system, executed the game plan. That team was Abbotsford in spades and was not San Diego for 2 out of the 3 periods and still mostly the second period. But the goals were just a mess in transition almost all of Friday's game. And not so much because Abbotsford forechecked well. It felt like they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with passes through the neutral zone. It was just failing to execute all over the place. Even when they did make it through the neutral zone, they didn't generate a lot of quality chances. For the one period, I felt like they were at least the better looking team in Friday's game was the second period. They dominated possession. They outshot Abbotsford 13-5 in the second period. 4 of those 13 were from home plate. By the time they got it going Saturday, it was 3-0. Or sorry, by the time they got it going Friday, it was 3-0 really. And at that point, you're basically in garbage time. Like it just looked like they were not ready to play and they weren't ready to execute. It still looked like they were not all completely on the same page. And that's a trend we've kind of noticed from them in our viewings from them this season, even though they've been a little bit further in between than we would have liked. And there's been some scheduling problems with us and with them. They've had a bunch of games canceled and we've just had moments where it's like, do we take San Diego here? We have this other, So maybe it's just our limited viewings of them. But this still was not a well-oiled machine Friday night.
Yeah. And I mean, looking back on here, did a little research. Turns out DiPietro actually getting called up to the taxi squad from what I'm reading here for Vancouver. So they had to kind of yoink him out of San Diego, I suppose. Let me check. Yes, taxi squad, Michael DiPietro. There you go.
Is Vancouver at home this weekend or were they on the road?
Oh, gosh.
Because like if you're yanking him from San Diego back to Vancouver, I almost want to raise the question of why.
Yeah, I'm not sure because that is a bit of a head scratcher. Let me see and go back here. Let's see. Well, the Canucks this past weekend, oh my God, they were on the other side of they were on the East Coast. They played Carolina and Washington.
Oh, I know they play Washington. I bet on that game.
That doesn't surprise me. But yeah, they were on the road and then they're playing Nashville tomorrow. So they're like, all right, well, we need a dude on the taxi squad. So come on out.
I mean, I guess for a road trip like that, but
sure. That makes sense.
I mean, it makes sense that they needed a goalie for a road trip, but you would have thought they would have taken him before they left. But yeah,
you would have thought
okay.
So. But hey, let's go back to the game. You're talking about the goals behind the 8 ball, and by the time they kind of got their stuff together, they were already down 3-0. They tried to wake up a little bit. Did that carry over into Saturday a little bit, Sean?
In terms of execution, it was a cleaner effort by San Diego on Saturday, but I would not call it clean. They had good stretches, but this is still a team that's struggling to go out there and just follow through on a game plan for 60 minutes. The Ducks just emptied their taxi squad in San Diego on Sunday, so I'm sure that guys like Greg Pattern will help the D-core find consistency as he's been a dependable defender and has been gone for a month. But this team misses Jamie Drysdale a lot. Brogan Rafferty has been better, but he's the only one who can really move the puck in transition. Briard is good in the offensive zone, but he's not a transition wizard like Drysdale is or Rafferty can be. And a lot of the breakdowns that you saw, too, were defensive ones that caused goals against the goals to happen. So, and yeah, some of that is the guys that they had on the roster, and some of that core they had to run out there is not of the best caliber that they could obtain, but probably what they could get at the moment. But Greg Pattern coming back will be a big difference, as well as a lot of the forward depth, because it was ugly all over for San Diego this weekend. But I keep wanting to have faith in this team because I see the names on the roster. I'm like, that guy's good. That guy's good. This should be a better team. And I don't know if they're just not clicking with Joel Bouchard, which would not make them the first team to have such grievances, or if it's really just, not their year or anything, which I don't buy into. Like, this should be a better team and they're underperforming right now.
Well, and the fact that you've got to keep, Tulsa Oilers head coach Rob Murray on speed dial so that you can pluck players from Tulsa if need be, that definitely doesn't help matters either. And especially in regards to chemistry and trying to gel as a team like that. But let's flip sides here, Sean. What is the big story for the Abby Nucks from this past weekend?
I mean, there are several. Mikey DiPietro, who apparently got a call-up right before that, though, got a much-needed W, his first since November, and played probably his best game since American Thanksgiving. And for the most part, he looked good doing it. Not the most active affair, a pretty manageable win by him. But hey, dubs are dubs, and we're not going to take that away from him. The Abby Nucks also got to play with a mostly AHL roster for the first time in forever. Like we said earlier, Patan and Rathbone back from injury, Dries, Lockwood, Brubacher, and Wu back from COVID protocol, Philip DiGiuseppe back from his own COVID protocol in Vancouver. While their bottom six and bottom pair are still frightening, especially since Cameron Schilling absconded to Europe in a footnote, basically. They have firepower back in the lineup for the first time in what felt like a very long time for the Abbotsford Canucks. Still, I thought they played a solid game Friday. Even if the second period got away from them in terms of possession, they still managed to keep the goals from anything really dangerous, despite getting pinned in their own end for long stretches. They kept a clean sheet for Mikey DiPietro and allowed him to just do his thing. And that's an effective strategy. Give what I still believe is a very talented goaltender a good environment to play in, and he will build you a chance to win that game with his net minding. And that's what I saw on Friday from them. It was not the cleanest effort. It wasn't the sexiest effort, but it was an effective one, and they did it well. On Saturday, though, I still say to this day, I have no idea how you got a 5-minute major from that play. And granted, the officiating in the series was atrociously bad in both games. There were just penalties going all over the place that the ref were staring straight down, and we're like, yeah, but what if no? And we saw that across all the series we played, except for, I think, maybe Providence. I think Providence was the best officiated series of this weekend that we covered. But all the rest of them were officiated like hot trash. And CC, you can very much back me up on this. I don't rip officiating because I don't root for either teams that we cover. Like, I am not a fan of a particular team in this league. So for me to be on the officiating is usually not my team got penalty calls, so that's why it's like you're a fan of good officiating. You're a fan of getting it right.
Absolutely.
Or if anything else, setting a standard for what a penalty call is going to be for that game, and then sticking to that standard.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, did we see a whole lot of that from that. But anyway, I don't know how you get a 5-minute power play from that for Abbotsford. But if you're Abbotsford, you need at the very minimum not to give up a shorthanded goal on the 5-minute power play, especially one like that where you have two guys hustle back to make it a 2-on-3, as in the 3 is in your favor on defense, rush chance against, and then botch a basic coverage and leave Alex Limoges just on an island with that rebound. I mean, woof. Like, that's, in terms of backbreaking shorthanded goals to give up, that's 3 of the top 5 right there with that goal. That absolutely crushed them. And not a good game by Artur Silovs on Saturday either, in my opinion. I thought he should have had both the O'Regan goal and Hunter Drew's goal. Those were more or less clean Wild West shootout style goals, and we say Wild West shootout style goals of 10 paces in turn, staring down the other guy and shooting anyway and beating past him. I thought both of those were ones he should have had. Yeah, there was some traffic in front. There were some circumstances, but nothing that was so egregious to allow those goals in. They were both from distance and from the outside. He had clean looks in both of them, in my opinion. I also thought Abbotsford looked tired and flat for stretches of Saturday, but they did at least manage to battle back a bit in the third and make the game somewhat interesting. But two very different levels of effort from Friday to Saturday from a team perspective from Abbotsford, 2 different qualities of goaltended games from them Friday to Saturday. And it seems to be one of those things where Abbotsford takes a step forward, but then takes a step backward and can never really make progress up the standings charts, especially too, as even if you're not getting loser points, like it's tough to climb that ladder when you're slipping down and you're not even getting a point for overtime.
Right. You mentioned Cameron Schilling, and absconded to Europe was a good phrase, good word usage right there. You can file that in the same jeopardy category as Lucas Elvenes, getting his contract terminated by Vegas and then getting picked up off of waivers by Anaheim when he was supposed to go to Sweden. Sean, you got something to say?
I don't think I've ever seen anyone get claimed from waivers that were unconditional waivers for the purpose of a termination.
Right.
And like, I don't blame Elvenes for walking away from Henderson. I really don't. Not because I think it's a bad organization or whatever, but like the writing was on the wall for him. When Vegas needed call-ups because they had 6 guys, hurt, they called up every dude on that team except for him, even ones that were much less deserving than he was. And at that point, it's like, okay, if I'm not going to get a look in those circumstances where you're pulling up guys who are below the depth chart in Henderson over me just for warm body use, like I think we're done here. Like if you're never going to give me a shot, like that's what I want. I want a shot.
Last year of his ELC. I mean, cut me loose.
I don't blame him for that point. Just all right, let's see what we can get going in Europe mid-season or something like that. But to see it, like I wasn't surprised that a team. I shouldn't say, like a team should have claimed him, but that's true of guys on waivers 70% of the time. I'm like, how does that guy not get claimed? Like that's still a useful player that you would absolutely trade a 7th round pick for or whatever. And yet, like Byron Bader's model that is hockey prospecting that kind of tries to make a trajectory for how likely a player is to become an everyday NHLer, places Lucas Elvenes at, I think, 62%. Yeah, a free look at a guy who is a 2/3 shot to be an everyday NHL player. Yeah, you should take that guy up. You should pick that guy up. But usually you don't see that when it's an unconditional waivers for the purpose of a buyout. Like I would have to go back to the archives to see if that's happened in my memory, because I couldn't think of a time where it's like, no, we're totally going to terminate this guy. We're like, actually, we'll take him.
Yeah. And the fact that it was made public, like he is going to go back to Sweden. He's going to play professionally back in Sweden. And then you see, I think Elliot Friedman, of course, Anaheim claims Elvenes. And it's like, hold up. Hold on a second. Like, what is going on here? And yeah, it's just so bizarre. I mean, and yeah, the Cameron Schilling thing, up and going to Europe in the middle of the season, I think that's more of an ECHL move than an AHL move, because that happens all the time in the ECHL. Guys will be suspended by their teams in the ECHL just so that team can hold on to his North American rights in professional hockey, or at least at the ECHL level. But at the AHL level, I feel like it doesn't happen as often. Bless you.
Yep.
Salute.
Fun editing for you. But it's not that surprising you see that at the ECH level, because I mean 2 months in Rapid City will probably be enough for you to want to go see what Sweden is like.
Fair.
But
that's fair.
It is really surprising, because then you just think too, it's like, oh, so what you're saying is Vegas could have traded him to Anaheim for like a 6th round pick or whatever, and probably gotten it.
Yeah.
Like you didn't even try and shop that guy. I was like, no, I'm just going to go to Sweden. Well, what if we could send you to another team who, will give you a shot? And that's all Anaheim had to say to him, is like, hey, we're going to claim you. And, should circumstances be right, we'll absolutely give you a shot with the Ducks. Okay, cool. I'm in.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I opened up a Pandora's box there. Sorry about that. But let's go to the player analysis of the guys that are still, Elvenes is still with San Diego, but who stood out to you at the player level in these games, Sean?
I mean, Justin Bailey, for sure. Justin Bailey did everything he could and then some to try and get happy 4 points on the weekend, and was a factor and involved in the play in all 3 zones whenever his steel hit the ice. You can't ask more from a guy than that. He did everything he could to manufacture goals, manufacture some power plays. Like he did everything. I also like Jet Wu's efforts on defense. I thought he brought the physicality. I still don't think he's ever going to have offensive upside, as he still treats every puck like a possession puck, which we talked about him in the preseason preview and a couple other spots on Jet Wu. So if you're unfamiliar with that, I don't want to explain it all right now. I'm very tired. But if you go back to our preseason preview for Abbotsford, we talk about it there, about possession pucks and attacking pucks. I thought Will Lockwood continued to be a useful forechecker and play with intensity, but continues to be good for at least one turnover that makes you do the Jackie Chan meme face. Phil DiGiuseppe looked alive and like he hadn't been off for a while, which is good. He definitely still takes shifts off, though, but he finds his way onto the score sheet, which is still good enough. Anytime you're going to put up, a goal here and there or an assist here and there, we'll take it. I still think that he is too talented to be just kind of disappearing for stretches during games, but that seems to just kind of be the guy he is, where he'll go an entire period and a half and you're like, wait, he's in this game? Oh yeah, that's a big hit and a primary assist. He's in this game. And then he just kind of goes away again. Brogan Rafferty really wanted to play a solid weekend here, and I thought for the most part that he did it, but he wanted to get on the score sheet bad, like a guy with his new girlfriend showing up to a party his ex will be at. I liked his intensity. I liked his efforts. I thought he was a force for good by and large for the goals this weekend, but there are still some defensive zone things that he needs to iron out. But if memory serves me correctly, he's blind in one eye. So I'd say that's still pretty freaking amazing given all of that. But yeah, I still like Brogan Rafferty. I still think eventually he's going to just blow it up and go on. He's going to end up in the cream of the crop one of these weekends because I know he's capable of it. I've seen it before. But this was not the weekend for that. There's always next weekend. I also want to give Francis Marot a lot of credit. Is he an AHL goalie? Unlikely. But Friday's loss is 100% not on him. He gave that goals team a chance to win and made a few absolute show-stopping saves. Yes, he got Wild West sniped twice, but for a middling at best ECHL goalie, he gave the goals all they could have asked for, and they let him down. But that is, the summary of the Gulls and Canucks series as we see it. It is now history. Let us look forward. Cece, where do both of these teams go from here?
Well, San Diego, they are still trying their best to crawl out of the basement there in the Pacific. 8th place out of 9 teams, 0.462 points percentage. They have been so erratic this season. They went from a rolling PDO of 89.39 on January 6th to 113.10 on January 13th. Obviously, them splitting the weekend will probably bring them down a little bit, maybe something a little more manageable than 113 of a PDO. The Gulls start a 4-game road trip playing San Jose on Tuesday, Stockton on Wednesday, and then a 2-game series in Abbotsford on Saturday and Sunday. So they go back and meet the Abbey Canucks again after playing a couple of their California brethren in between. Abbotsford, not faring much better, but I did have to update the stats. They were 7th. They're now 6th place, even 500 in the Pacific Division. They will try, and they have gotten some momentum going, having 3 games postponed in the last 3 weeks. They've gone now 2-3-1 since the first postponements on December 30th, because the Abbotsford Canucks played the Ontario Reign tonight as we were recording, and they beat them 2-1 in the shootout. So they got 2 points there. They're going to head back home, and their next games, as I mentioned before, against the San Diego Gulls at home this weekend.
All right, well, we are going to take a break here, and we will get to the cream of the crop, the best players of the weekend. If you are just here for San Diego and or Abbotsford, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. These recaps are not very useful to you next Tuesday if you're just hearing them. Also, make sure you check us out on social media where we do the memes. Links to all of that, our Facebook page, our Twitter account, my stats page, our YouTube channel. All of those things and more can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. We're going to pay some bills, run some ads. We will be right back.
All right, let me tell you a little something. I've got some tempered madness here. It's getting a little late, so I'm not gonna get a little wild. I'm not gonna let the madness run wild, you know what I mean? But we got some cream of the crop coming up, so Sean, take it away. We got some AHL players of the weekend that we gotta cover. So why don't you take it easy, and I'm gonna go take a nap, and I'll see you on the other side, brother.
All right, my first cream of the crop for the weekend is Nate Schnarr of the Utica Comets. 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points, 4 primary points. Had the primary assist on the OT winner on Friday. Scores another big goal on Saturday to get the Comets within 1 in the third period. Anytime you put up a 5-point weekend, you're going to appear on cream of the crop somewhere. Nate Schnarr is my first cream of the crop. CC / Macho Man, who is your first?
Well, let me tell you a little something. I got some liquid hot Magna. Yeah, liquid hot Magna. Jason Magna from the Colorado Eagles. You bet your buns. 2 shootout winners. Not 1, but 2. And a regulation goal this weekend. He's responsible for helping lift those Colorado Eagles, flying up like wings on eagles. Yeah. To back-to-back shootout wins. And I'll tell you, it's got to be a little bit quiet in this household. There's people trying to sleep, but you got a nice river flow of liquid hot Magna. Oh, yeah. Probably under there in the Tonga. You know what I'm saying, with the volcano explosion. That's kind of how the Macho Man operates. But Jason Magna, my first cream of the crop.
Sticking with the Colorado Eagles theme, my second cream of the crop is Jordan Gross, who CC correctly identified in our quiz last week, from the Colorado Eagles. 6 assists on the weekend, 4 primary points, 2 shootout goals. Assisted on the game-winning goal in the third period on Friday, scored in the critical third round of the shootout Friday and Saturday to extend the shootout to allow Jason Magna to win it in both games. That is very cream of the crop worthy. I see we were both on the same page for the second cream of the crop here. You know, one hand shaking the other. Jordan Gross, my second cream of the crop of the weekend. Cece, who is yours?
Let me tell you a little something about Sarah Noel. Yeah, Sarah Noel from the Columbus, not the Columbus. Oh, that always throws me off, the CLT. It's Charlotte, not Columbus, the Charlotte Checkers. Noel helps the Checkers put up 8 goals against Texas on Saturday because he put up a hat trick. Take off your hat, throw it on the ice, because all 3 of his scores came in the first period on just 4 shots. 75% shooting? I'll take it any day of the week, brother. 3 scores, hat trick for Sarah Noel of the Charlotte Checkers, not Columbus. Get out of Columbus. I'll tell you what, my second cream of the crop. Oh, yeah.
All right, for me, I said we'd talk about him later, and here he is, my third and final cream of the crop. The top of the cream of the crop is Samuel Asalin, the Ass Man from the Providence Bruins. 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points on the weekend, 5 primary points. Hat trick Sunday versus Bridgeport, was just everywhere across the 3-and-3, getting it done for the P Bruins. Sammy Asalin, the Ass Man, my cream of the crop.
The last of my cream of the crop is going to be the Kangaroo Man himself, Joey the Kangaroo Anderson from the Toronto Marlies. Another hat trick here on the macho side of the cream, if you know what I mean. 2 power play goals. One of them he had 3. One of them was going to be at 5v5, even strength there. Second power play goal happened to come, a minute and 6 seconds into overtime. Toronto now on a 6-game winning streak. They are on their way. They sit third in the North Division, just 0.004 percentage points behind Rochester in 3 less games played. Let me tell you, Joey Anderson, the Kangaroo himself. Somebody get that man a pouch. He is my top of the crop in the cream of the crop for this weekend. Oh, yeah. Feel the madness. Tempered madness. It's 10-14 Mountain. You gotta take it easy. Take it easy, Sean, if you know what I mean.
All right.
Well, hey, that's going to be it for the show, and we do appreciate it. Thanks for watching and or listening. The Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and sports entertainment programs, or pro wrestling if you prefer, at fullpresscoverage.com. Just click on the podcast drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website. That's the big list populating, by the way. And you can enjoy. And of course, you're listening to us. We thank you for it with all the other podcasts out there, both on the Full Press Radio Network and otherwise. Thanks for choosing the Calder Farmstead.
And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon, please rate and review the podcast. Or if you're watching it on YouTube, like the video and comment what you thought of the episode. Doing so helps others find the show, and your reviews help us improve it. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at The Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more can be found in our Linktree page, which is linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You could find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So we can make music for you too. Cece, where can people find you on social media?
Well, my name is Cece Hockley. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at FPC_AHL and at my personal Twitter account at CeeCeeHawk. That's SEESEEHAWK. A lot of hockey tweets. Big surprise there, right? But music, films, pro wrestling, pop culture. If it keeps me interested, hopefully it's not going to be bullshit for you. Check out my writing on the Full Press Coverage Network at fullpresshockey.com. Sean, enough about me. Where can the people find you?
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at SeanO'Brien81. That's SeanO'Brien81. I'm also on Instagram. I actually posted a couple of things there this weekend at SeanO'Brien_81. All of the stats, things that we talk about that you can't find on the AHL's stats page. So PDO, point shares, standings projections, game probabilities, all of those things, the model that we pump the tires of to take over the human race, that can all be found on my Tableau page at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. Cece, take us home.
That will do it for episode number 76 of the Calder Farmstead. For Sean O'Brien celebrating the 100 years of independence in the country of Ireland. My name is Cece Hockley, and I really don't have anything catchy to say about myself. So, with all of that said, we ask that you, of course, keep your stick on the ice.